Cliff Hagan Stadium is now in the books. 50 years of baseball coming to a close 2 weekends ago against Mississippi State. But the new stadium, a $49 million facility, which is a long fly ball over the cliff, will have many characteristics of Cliff Hagan Stadium, especially the playing surface. When UK moves into its new baseball palace later this summer or early fall, the playing surface will be AstroTurf. It won't be like the turf designed for major league stadiums in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and early 90s, but rather a more balanced type of carpet.
So when we first began talking with the University of Kentucky, we talked about, our system and the playability, how we can transfer and almost make it, we're trying to replicate clay, we're trying to replicate natural grass.
Home plate area, we do 2 different speeds, and 10 apiece. And then we'll shoot it into the grass out in front of home plate at 2 different speeds, 10 apiece. So we've got 40 to take a sample from.
Numerous tests were done to check the distance of your standard ground balls, the bounce off the grass, and the turf-based paths, which UK put down a couple of years ago.
Here we are today, got a little bit of science, got our team up here from Dalton, Georgia. Got some guys from the R&D lab, and we bring a jugs machine, some velo. We're trying to replicate exit speeds off the bat, hit into the ground, and see how far it can bounce and how high it bounces. And then when we go over to infill the new stadium, when I say infill, the new stadium is going to be a synthetic carpet. It's going to have some sand and rubber in it. So we're going to try to replicate as true as we can the cliff over there.
Why is it so important to replicate the surface at the new stadium with turf? Well, just ask former Major League Baseball veteran and former Wildcat pitcher Scott Downs.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, I've always said this is one of the best playing surfaces I've ever played on. One of the best mounds I've ever pitched on.
At the new stadium, the mound will be dirt. Now, some baseball traditionalists may ask, why turf? Numerous factors go into that decision. One is AstroTurf can handle the day-to-day grind with practice and games, but another is weather. UK is the northernmost school in the SEC.
Yes, when you just think about, the part of the country that we're in, and you know what, it just makes sense. When you just think about all the times that tarp has been on and off the field, when you think about, the spring that we had this year, although it was totally different than the one from a year ago, it just makes too much sense to be able to just get out there and play. And you know what, I was talking to some other coaches around, the country that have turf, and they're like, Nick, you're like a basketball coach now. You set your time and you're practicing, right? It's just like, hey, if it's raining, it doesn't matter. It's going to be fine. You can still play on it. So for our players to know that, hey, regardless, rain, snow, sleet, it doesn't matter. We're going to play. I mean, that's a huge bonus for us.
But in the northern climate, and we're on the border here. Today it's not so northern, but in the spring season of college baseball, when they want to play so early, the playing surface has got to be at its best.
Believe it or not, there are different mixtures used for what will represent clay or dirt and grass.
So on the brown, I like to call it clay, obviously, and the green is the grass. We actually have different infill mixtures in those areas. So our clay is going to lay over and naturally be firmed up and try to replicate clay, and we're going to have a different composition of sand and rubber in there. It's going to be a little bit firmer, a little bit harder to replicate that clay. Same thing in the grass. We're going to have just a little bit softer composition. We're going to do a 50-50 mixture of sand and rubber to give you that true Kentucky Bermuda grass feel.
We want the bounce to be consistent because we want it to play like a natural field. Now, the speed of the field might play a little quicker, but the consistency of the bounce, we want it to be as close to the natural surface as we can get.